All right, so let's start with a big story that we are tracking on WION at this hour. In the latest turn of events in the Russia-Ukraine ceasefire talks, the American President Donald Trump has said that he'll meet with Vladimir Putin without the Russian leader first sitting down with the Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky ahead of the high-level Russia-US summit.
Is your deadline still standing for Vladimir Putin to agree with ceasefire tomorrow, or is that fluid now?
It's going to be up to him. We're going to see what he has to say. It's going to be up to him. Very disappointed. Yeah.
For you to meet with him, he doesn't have to agree to meet with Zelensky. Is that what you're saying?
No, he doesn't. No.
So when do you think that meeting?
They would like to meet with me, and I'll do whatever I can to stop the killing.
Now, Moscow's Deputy United Nations Ambassador Dmitry Polyansky has confirmed that President Trump and President Putin may meet next week. Now, Trump's latest statement contradicts earlier reports that a Putin-Zelensky meeting was a prerequisite for a US-Russia summit. Now, this has come after Trump set a Friday deadline for Moscow to agree to a ceasefire or to face some new sanctions. When reporters in the Oval Office asked if the deadline still stands, Trump did not give a clear answer and instead said that it was up to Putin. Since returning to the White House in January, Trump has been pressurizing Moscow to end the Russia-Ukraine conflict. Now, the Kremlin has said that Putin was set to attend a summit with Trump in the coming days, but Putin has named the United Arab Emirates as a potential location for the summit. But this has not been confirmed. After Kremlin's announcement, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has defended his country's right to participate in potential peace talks between the leaders of Russia and the United States.
Everyone obviously knows for sure that the key decisions in Russia are made by one person, and that this person is afraid of sanctions from the United States of America, and that it is right for Ukraine to be a participant in the negotiations. Russia's war is against Ukraine, against our independence as the embodiment of the independence of every European nation.
Now, reports of a potential summit surfaced after the US envoy Steve Witkoff met with President Putin in Moscow. Now, Witkoff, in fact, suggested a trilateral meeting with Ukraine's President Zelensky, but Putin dismissed the direct talks for now, saying that certain conditions must be created first. And unfortunately, we are still far from that. The summit would be the first between the sitting United States and the Russian president since Joe Biden had met Putin in Geneva in June 2021. Now, 3 rounds of direct Russia-Ukraine talks in Istanbul had failed to yield any progress towards a ceasefire. The two sides remain far apart in the conditions that they have set to end the more than 3-year-long war. Now, Trump and Putin had last sat down together in 2019 at the G20 summit in Japan, and this was during Trump's first term. They've spoken over the telephone several times since Trump returned to the White House this year, and it now remains to be seen what can be achieved through this summit meeting, which hasn't already been done. All right, now joining us in the broadcast, we have Dr. Glenn Diesen, who's a professor of international relations at the University of Southeastern Norway and an editor at the Russia in Global Affairs Journal. Dr. Diesen, thank you very much indeed for joining us here on WION. And this, of course, is the big question. The summit is finally happening, and it's happening without any preconditions. With that being said, what do you think this summit between Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin can achieve that hasn't already been talked about and discussed in the phone calls that Donald Trump has had with Vladimir Putin?
Well, I don't think this is all talk. I know it's easy perhaps to dismiss it, given that the two parties are very far apart. But there have been talks of signals coming from from Moscow that the Americans might be coming around. That is, the situation is changing very rapidly. For anyone following the front line, there's a massive collapse coming along. There's panic going on in Washington because there's nothing they can do to slow down this. There's no more real sanctions or weapons that can have any significant impact. And some American sources are also telling me that Zelensky is also feeling the desperation and will be much more likely to accept a more painful compromise now. So right. I do think that something interesting can actually come from this.
Okay, you said something interesting can come from this. Now, one thing that Donald Trump does not want is to be humiliated. If Donald Trump agrees to every condition that Russia sets forth, then that would be tantamount to surrender. And that is something that he can't go back to the United States and then explain. In your assessment, what concessions can Vladimir Putin make so that Russia can meet the Americans halfway to bring about some kind of a ceasefire deal?
Well, the Russians have, I would say, three major demands. The first one, the most important, is that Ukraine restores its neutrality. Now, this would entail no NATO expansion, but it leaves up some room for negotiations on other issues. For example, if Ukraine might join the European Union and any of these events, this also be a possibility. The second is the territorial concessions, because if this would have happened 3 years ago, Russia wouldn't have demanded any territories, as we saw in Istanbul. But this is very different now. They will demand, again, these 4 regions that they have annexed. However, also here, the Russians might be able to give some ground, because they don't actually control all the territories of this 4 regions they have annexed. So it is possible that they're willing to change the borders of these regions and come to a deal where they don't necessarily demand everything. I think they will demand all of Donbass, that is Donetsk and Lugansk, but whatever of Zaporozhye and Kherson, which ends up on the left side of the Dnieper River, I think it's possible to get some give away something there. And the third is the security guarantees. That is, security guarantees goes against the principle of Ukrainian neutrality. However, I've heard proposals such as having Ukrainian weapon depots on European territory, which could be transferred in case there would be another war. So there are different things that could be done. So I wouldn't it's not either or. So I do think that the Russians would be in a position to make some concessions if they get the key foundation, which is to address the underlying causes, which is a broken European security architecture, with NATO expanding further and further onto the Russian borders.
All right, interesting. We'll have to wait and watch as to what actually does end up coming out of this summit. But thank you very much indeed, Dr. Glendison, for joining us with that perspective there.